You've heard his name. Maybe on a quote shared in a motivational video. Maybe by someone pretending that emotionlessness is strength. But who was Seneca, really? And what did he teach? Not just about surviving life, but mastering it. Today, you meet the real Seneca. Not the Stoic caricature, not the Twitter philosopher, but the Roman statesman who stared down power, loss, exile, and still chose virtue over vengeance. Lucius Annaeus Seneca. Born around 4 BCE in Corduba, Hispania, what we now call Spain, son of a famous rhetorician. Exiled by an emperor, advisor to another, forced to take his own life at the command of the very student he once mentored, Nero. And yet, his life was far from a tragedy, because through it all, Seneca was building something, not an empire, not a fortune, but a fortress within his own mind. Seneca left behind a legacy that few thinkers in history can rival, 124 moral letters read like personal meditations on life, philosophical treatises like On the Shortness of Life, On Anger, and On Tranquility, and dramas so brutal in their portrayal of human vice they inspired Shakespeare himself. Yet today his teachings are simplified, distorted, sometimes even weaponized. Influencers who've never opened a book in their life tell you to be stoic like Seneca, meaning feel nothing, show no weakness, dominate without empathy. But that wasn't Seneca. He felt deeply. He grieved. He raged. He feared. But instead of being ruled by those feelings, he trained himself to understand them, then rise above them. That's the Stoicism we're going to uncover. The Stoicism that builds real mental resilience. Not the numbness of a man avoiding life, but the inner calm of a man who has mastered it. Let's be honest, we're fragile. We live in an age of overstimulation and under-reflection. One insult online ruins your day. One failure and your identity shatters. One unexpected challenge and your so-called discipline disappears like smoke. And when we turn to modern Stoicism for help, what do we find? Quotes without context, mantras without meaning, and a cult of emotional suppression disguised as wisdom. Seneca never said, "Don't feel." He said, "Feel, but understand." He never said, "Don't care." He said, "Care about what matters." That's the Stoicism we've forgotten. And it starts with the first principle, the mastery of judgment. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Let that settle." It's not the event that breaks you, it's what you believe the event means. That's where the pain begins. Not in the thing itself, but in the story you tell about it. A Stoic doesn't deny that life hurts. He just refuses to amplify the pain by layering it with false meaning. Your friend betrays you. That's the event. But the suffering, the true spiral, comes from what follows. Why me? I can't trust anyone again. I'm not enough. These judgments are not facts. They are interpretations. Seneca believed that most emotions, especially the destructive ones, begin with wrong thinking. Anger is born from the belief that you've been wronged unfairly. Fear arises when you believe that something terrible is guaranteed to happen. Grief becomes unbearable when you believe that the loss is unacceptable. But beliefs can be questioned. Seneca doesn't ask you to be cold, he asks you to be curious. He wants you to stop, to reflect, to ask, is this feeling coming from the event, or from my mind's story about it? Let me give you an example. You lose your job. The emotional reaction might be, I failed, I'm worthless. This is a disaster. But the Stoic reaction is different. It starts with a pause, then a question. What's under my control right now? Maybe you still have your skills. Maybe you needed a push out of a toxic system. Maybe this isn't the end. but the uncomfortable beginning of something truer. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it does mean it's possible to suffer well, to choose a response that builds strength, not bitterness. How influencers misrepresent this. They say, don't react, be emotionless, be hard. But Seneca isn't telling you to be hard. He's telling you to be honest. He's not asking for a stone face. He's asking for a clear mind. Mental toughness isn't refusing to cry. It's knowing why you cry and choosing what comes next. That's judgment. That's mastery. That's where Stoicism begins. Living according to nature and reason. Seneca believed that most people live like actors in someone else's play, reciting lines they never wrote, chasing things they never questioned, fearing outcomes they never examined. To him, real strength comes from stepping off that stage. No man can live a happy life, he wrote, or even a supportable life, without the study of wisdom. But what did wisdom mean to a Stoic? It meant this: to live in accordance with nature. Now, this isn't about hugging trees or following animal instincts. To the Stoics, nature was reason, the inner order of the universe and the rational order within you. To live according to nature meant aligning your life with virtue rather than chaos, with clarity rather than impulse. Seneca looked around Rome and saw madness. He saw senators obsessed with fame, merchants crushed by greed, men sacrificing their health, families and freedom just to gain the approval of people they didn't even respect. And he knew this was not living. This was performing. This was slavery. He wrote, "So many count themselves rich when they've counted nothing." In other words, they measure their worth by coins, by praise, by external applause, while remaining bankrupt in soul. Seneca rejected that, not by renouncing society, but by reordering his values. Instead of asking, "How much can I gain?" he asked, "How much do I need to be free?" And his answer was almost always, "Less than I thought." He said, "The true felicity of life is to enjoy the present without any anxious dependence on the future." Think about that. He's not saying don't plan. He's saying don't let your happiness depend on some distant achievement. A man who's always waiting for a better future never really lives. Seneca's idea of resilience is not grinding 24/7. It's having enough. Enough character to say no. Enough awareness to enjoy what's in front of you. Enough philosophy to stop needing more. Influencers misrepresent this. They take live simply and turn it into aesthetic minimalism. White walls, bare desks, no furniture, as if virtue lives in your apartment decor. Or they go the opposite way, using Stoicism to justify relentless ambition. "I want to get rich, but I'll be stoic about it," Seneca would laugh. Because it's not about what you own. It's about what owns you. Mental toughness to him was freedom from compulsion. If you can walk away from luxury, from applause, from even your own ego, then you're strong. If you must have them to feel okay, then you're a slave. In a society that worships hustle and performance, Seneca's resilience means something radical. To live by reason, not reaction. To measure your wealth in clarity, not clutter. To be the master of your own desires, not their servant. That's how you live according to nature, and that's how you begin to build real peace. Time and death. Seneca believed that time is not just precious, it's sacred, and that most of us live as if we'll never die. We plan our future like emperors, we waste our hours like beggars, and then one day, we panic. We say, life is short. But Seneca didn't agree. It is not that we have a short space of time, but that we waste much of it. In his essay, On the Shortness of Life, he delivers one of the most devastating observations ever written. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. In other words, you run from pain like you'll die tomorrow, but you chase comfort like you'll live forever. and it's killing you. Seneca saw time not as something to spend, but to invest. He warned us, you'd fight someone over stealing your wallet, but you let the world rob your minutes, your days, your life. You scroll endlessly. You people please. You fill your schedule with trivia. Then you say, where did the day go? Seneca knew where it went. It went nowhere. You gave it away, piece by piece, to things that never mattered. And so his answer was simple, but brutal. Guard your time like your life depends on it, because it does. He advises living deliberately, not in a frantic rush to do more, but in a quiet, steady focus on what matters. He believed that if you live with intention, if you cultivate your mind, tend to your soul, serve others, and contemplate life, you will find that even a short life is long enough. How influencers misrepresent this. They twist it into toxic productivity. Wake up at 4 a.m., work every second, hustle till you collapse. That's not Seneca. That's neurosis. Seneca isn't saying do more. He's saying waste less. Waste less time on things that don't shape your soul. Waste less time chasing approval. Waste less time being someone you're not. Time is the arena of the mind. It's where you forge virtue or feed vice, and it's always running out. So if you want mental toughness, start with this. Know what your time is worth. Spend it only on what strengthens you. And treat every hour like a life in miniature. Because the truth is this: you don't need more time. You need more intention. Voluntary discomfort. If comfort is a cage, Seneca believed that voluntary discomfort is the key. Not because pain is noble in itself, but because choosing discomfort trains you to master the inevitable. You don't build toughness by hiding from hardship. You build it by inviting it, on your own terms, before life forces it on you. Set aside a certain number of days, Seneca wrote, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself all the while, is this the condition I feared? This wasn't masochism, it was training. Seneca was wealthy, at times one of the richest men in Rome, but wealth didn't own him, because he practiced poverty. He walked barefoot on cold ground. He slept without comfort. He ate basic meals, not because he had to, but because he chose to. So that when the world took something from him, status, luxury, control, he was ready. Voluntary hardship is a rehearsal. You imagine the worst, you practice living with less, and in doing so, you dismantle fear. This is called preparatio adversum futurum, a Stoic preparation against the future. When you fast, when you endure cold, when you give up luxuries temporarily, not as punishment, but as exercise, you remind your mind, you are stronger than you think. This is how influencers misrepresent this. Modern self-help loves this idea, but turns it into performance. Cold showers, 75-day challenges, extreme routines. But Seneca would ask, why? If your hardship is just a stunt, just content, it doesn't build virtue, it builds ego. Seneca's version was quiet, private, internal. He wasn't proving something to his followers, he was preparing his soul for fate. That's the difference. Because here's the truth. Anyone can be comfortable in ideal conditions. But the Stoic asks, who are you when comfort disappears? Can you stay calm in the storm? Can you endure hunger without losing dignity? Can you face insult without craving revenge? Voluntary discomfort teaches this. You already have what you need. The world cannot break a man who has practiced breaking himself. This isn't about denial, it's about training. Like a soldier who trains in peace so he can endure war, you train your spirit through chosen hardship so that when life turns ruthless, you stay rooted. If Seneca had a final destination, a goal for all this discipline and reflection, it was this: inner tranquility, a mind unmoved by praise or insult, a soul steady across gain and loss, a man who does not flinch because he has nothing to prove. He called it equanimitas, equanimity, not indifference, not numbness, but stability. Tranquility is a certain equality of mind, Seneca wrote, which no condition of fortune can either exalt or depress. In other words, you don't become arrogant when life favors you, and you don't collapse when it turns. That is the rarest strength, and it comes not from what happens around you, but from what you believe within you. To Seneca, a tranquil man is a man who has dealt with his cravings, his fears, his false hopes. He no longer needs everything to go his way because his identity doesn't depend on it. He knows that loss is part of the game, that death is not the enemy, that pain can be endured. And so, he does not panic. He walks through the world like a seasoned traveler, never surprised, never desperate, never in denial. Today, Stoic calm is often confused with emotional detachment. Don't care, don't flinch, don't love. That's not equanimity. That's avoidance. Seneca cared deeply. He loved his wife. He grieved his loved ones. He agonized over the corruption of Rome. But he didn't let those feelings own him. He let them pass through him. That's the essence. The Stoic doesn't fear pain. He embraces it because he knows it ends. He doesn't fear joy because he doesn't cling to it. He walks the middle path, not in numbness, but in stillness. He acts from principle, not impulse, from reason, not reaction, from presence, not panic. And in that stillness he becomes untouchable, not because he controls the world, but because he has mastered the only thing that ever mattered, his own soul. Seneca died by his own hand in 65 CE, forced to commit suicide by the emperor he once guided, Nero. But he did not die weak. He bathed. He comforted his friends. He opened his veins with calm, because he had lived his philosophy. Every line he ever wrote, he lived. That is the measure of a man. Today we are flooded with advice, mindset hacks, hustle porn, emotional suppression dressed up as strength. But real mental toughness? The Roman kind? It is not loud. It is not brutal. It is not for show. It is this: to master your judgments, to align your life with reason, to guard your time like gold, to train through hardship, and to find, at last, a still soul. That's Seneca's Stoicism. That's your path to inner resilience, not because life will get easier, but because you'll get stronger. If this resonated with you, don't just listen. Practice. Read Seneca. Reflect. Rebuild. And if you want to go deeper into philosophy, discipline, and becoming unshakable, subscribe to Regal Contour. Leave a comment. What hardship are you preparing for right now? Let's walk this path like Roman philosophers. Together. And if discipline is something you're working on, we've got a video for that. Check the description, you'll find it there.